Holy Gospel of Jesus Christ according to Matthew. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Step after step, the Rabbi Jesus made his way up the mountain as larger and larger crowds followed him. His disciples tried to keep pace with him and were mostly just glad to see him. Jesus was just back from some 40 days in the wilderness where he fasted and meditated and found himself tempted after being driven into the wilderness by the Spirit of God. "Jesus, we were worried about you. What happened while you were out there in the wilderness?" "Maybe some other time," Jesus says, as he scans the hill back behind them and watches more and more people follow him up the mountain. He smiles and keeps on walking like a man with a special secret. He knew these people wanted to hear from him. He knew his disciples, who at this point were very freshly chosen, were looking to him for some kind of a tone as to what he was about, to give some kind of a clue as to the way Jesus thought about life. We call what was about to happen the Sermon on the Mount, but to them it was probably just Tuesday or Wednesday. And no one knew quite yet what Jesus really was about, or why he had chosen this ragamuffin band of disciples. They were common people with jobs and families and responsibilities. A few of them were learned men, but most of them were blue-collar workers, not religious students. They were rough around the edges. They had interesting backstories, and I'm sure times in their lives that they weren't proud of. These were real people, flawed people, and in each case, like each of us, broken people. And we shouldn't forget, these men had almost certainly been passed over by other rabbis looking for disciples out of the young sons of good Jewish families of the day. Rabbis calling disciples was a fairly common thing, and only the cream of the crop were chosen. Early on, the best and the brightest were singled out and spent their lives afterwards devoted to following the teachings of their rabbi. Well, the years rolled by, and these average boys became average men and got on with life. Jesus found a good spot near a high meadow on the mountain, and as rabbis do, he sat down and started teaching. What came next would be the largest single recorded section of teachings of Jesus in the Gospels. Some scholars say that the Sermon on the Mount holds all the essential aspects of the Christian religion. And Jesus starts out in true Jesus fashion by turning every expectation upside down. We think we know what it looks like if you do what you're supposed to do. If you dot all your I's and cross all your T's and play well on the playground and mind your manners and make good grades and succeed and get a good job and marry well and buy a house with a picket fence and 2.5 kids and climb that ladder of success. Wow. What a blessed life. Because that's how it works, right? You do everything right and you get all the blessings. Of course, that's not how it works. But it's hard to blame people for getting caught in that thought trap, because society teaches us at an early age a very different set of beatitudes than Jesus mentions here. The meek don't inherit the earth. The meek get taken advantage of. And historically speaking, they get their land stolen from them. And the merciful and the pure in heart, well, that's cute, but way too naive to be practical. Everybody knows you have to do unto others before they do unto you. Blessed are the proud in spirit, who take what they want, because God helps those who help themselves. I find over and over again that I am in conversations with people who are full of stories about how they did everything right and life still found a way to fall apart around them. People who are good people with good intentions, who have been wounded by the things that have happened to them. And most of us, I think, would readily admit also that decisions have consequences, and many of us have had to live with the wounds of consequences from our decisions. We've come to understand that, and I think that's part of why what Jesus says here seems so out of touch with reality. Life just isn't the way that Jesus talks about in the Beatitudes. This word blessed that he uses can be problematic. Sometimes we read the Beatitudes like a how-to list. If you want to be blessed, be poor in spirit. But maybe the Beatitudes are less of a how-to list and more of a description of the reality that God is ushering in through Jesus. These aren't how-to statements. They are statements of how things are in a reality that is not of this world. It's a reality that is the aim of those who would call themselves followers of the way of Christ. The Greek word for blessed is makarios. It's also translated as happy. And I think happy gives us a deeper window into what Jesus is saying here. Blessed gives this connotation of some sort of reward for the condition that follows. Blessed are the poor in spirit. If you're poor in spirit, you will be blessed. For me, though, it sounds too much like God is rewarding you for being poor in spirit. But if we use the translation happy, it makes a little more sense. Happy are the poor in spirit. Why? Because they're poor in spirit? No. Because the kingdom of heaven is made up of the poor in spirit. Jesus instantly takes away all the qualifications here and levels the field. In each case, one by one, he shows us how each group is an essential part of the reality God reveals through Jesus. Happy are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is made up of these. Happy are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Happy are the meek, for in God's reality, they will inherit the earth. Happy are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because in God's reality, they are satisfied. Happy are the merciful, for they no longer get taken advantage of, but receive back mercy. Happy are the pure in heart, for they really will see God. And on these descriptions of what it is like to exist in the reality of God, alive through Christ in us and through us, even as we are broken on the wheels of living, broken beyond all possibility of deserving a blessing. That brokenness just coursing through our veins. If you wrestle with the wounds of life enough, they will try to convince you that you are not what God had in mind, that you have gone all wrong, that you've gone too far, you've failed too many times. You tried to do the right thing, and even then, life has run you over like a tank. And so you pick up the pieces, put them back together as best you can, and try to keep your head down. The American novelist and playwright Thornton Wilder has a one-act play called The Angel That Troubled the Waters. It's loosely based on a story in the Gospel of John about the pool of Bethesda. The people of that time believed in the power of the pool of Bethesda to heal whenever an angel would stir the waters. When the water was still, nothing would happen. But when the water began to stir, people who were ill, who were waiting around the pool, would come and try to get into the water, pressing in on every side, and there was only so much room. People would wait in great numbers until the stirring. Wilder tells the story about a physician who is wrestling with melancholy or depression. The physician is waiting because he wants to be healed of his depression. He waits and waits till finally the waters begin to stir. The angel is there stirring the waters, and the physician rushes forward and is the first to go into the water, but before he gets his foot in, the angel stops him and says, "No, it is not your time." And the physician draws back and says, "Please let me be healed of this depression. If I were healed, think of all that I could do for so many people and the healing that I could accomplish." The angel says, "No. For without your wounds, where would your power be? It is your melancholy that makes your low voice tremble into the hearts of men and women. The very angels themselves cannot persuade the wretched and blundering children on earth as one human being can, who's been broken on the wheels of living. You see, physician, in love's service, only wounded soldiers can serve." So if you find yourself poor in spirit, you are not alone. You make up the kingdom of heaven.